There's an old saying that has been around for a long time. Eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, you're head in the game. And if you can just tell yourself that and remind yourself of things like that and tell yourself, I'm at work.
Welcome to the Oakley Podcast, Trucking, Business, and Family. This show is brought to you by Oakley Trucking, headquartered in North Little Rock, Arkansas. The purpose of this podcast is to communicate with Oakley owner-operators and their families by giving them up-to-date information concerning Oakley Trucking and the trucking industry, from business advice to safety updates to success stories. Also to give an insight to outside truck drivers that might be interested in joining the Oakley family. Hi, I'm Jeremy Kellett, Director of Recruiting here at Oakley Trucking, and I'm your host for this podcast. This is episode 30. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about distracted driving. Got Randy Rymel sitting in with me today, and we're going to get down and dirty with some distracted driving and talk about some examples that have happened at the past and here at Oakley, and also talk about some solutions maybe, and hope to get you thinking a little bit about distracted driving because we know it's a huge problem on the roads today. But first, I want to let you know, if you didn't hear last week's podcast, man, I recommend you guys go back and listen to it. I had Al Robertson from Duck Dynasty on there and just did a great episode. I encourage everybody to go back and listen to that one if you haven't yet. So let's get, before we get started here, let's listen to Vickie Chastain with this week's Need to Know segment.
If you're not careful, you can easily find yourself spending too much money while on the road away from home. Saving money on the road, that's this week's Need to Know segment. Plan ahead, bring food with you, and if you really need something, try to purchase it at a regular store, not a truck stop. When you're home, you want to enjoy your time there and don't want to think about heading back out. But taking a little time to prep for your next trip out is incredibly important and will save you money on the road. Setting some financial goals will help you stay motivated while out on the road. I'm Vickie Chastain, and that's this week's Need to Know segment.
Okay, Randy Rymel, what's going on today? You doing all right?
I'm doing good. It sure is a beautiful day here in Arkansas.
Isn't it though, man?
Yes,
it is nice. A little weather changing a little bit, getting a little cooler.
That's right.
Leaves are changing. Just different things happen then, don't they?
It's good. It's really beautiful place here at Oakley today.
Isn't it though? Want to talk distracted driving today.
Okay.
And I want to get your input because you are a safe driver, of course.
Absolutely.
But more than that, you've driven over the road for how long?
Started my driving career in 1977 and got out of a truck in 1998. So what's that, like 21 years?
That's good.
It's a long time. That is a long time. Lots of miles. I don't want to jinx myself. I'll probably have a crash on the way home, but so far I can say that I've never had an accident in all of that 21 years of driving.
That is awesome.
So that's,
pretty impressive. You can drive that long. Now, in all fairness, were there that many distractions as there is today back then?
Yes, there were, but they were different kinds.
Okay.
And today it's real easy for us to blame it on all the technology and cell phones, which it is. It contributes a lot. But there was still a lot of those old-fashioned, and the reason I call them old-fashioned distractions is because it's just simply the driver himself allowed himself to be distracted. He's going down the highway and he sees this guy out there fishing in a lake. And he looks out there and he's thinking, man, that could be me. And he gets to thinking about his boat. He says, well, I hadn't been home for 2 weeks now, but last time I looked at the boat, I think it had a flat tire on it. Can't remember when was the last time I took it to the lake. So all the time he's going down the highway thinking about his boat at home. Who's driving the truck?
Yeah.
Because his mind, even though his body's there in the truck, his mind is on his boat or that last excursion they had at the lake or whatever the case might have been, but he's not thinking about his driving.
Yeah, I can understand that too. And that is a prime example of one of the three ways that distracted driving is categorized. So, and this was just a little bit of my research. I know you're the you're the safety man here, but I did a little bit of research on some of this too, just so I could be prepared. But the three ways is, one is visual, like you're talking about, seeing stuff.
Exactly.
Out there fishing.
Right.
The second is manual, actually hands off the wheel. I'm reaching for something. I'm looking for something in the truck. I'm eating or something like that. And then the other one, number three, is cognitive, which is another, what you were just describing. Your mind's on that boat or whatever else, and you're not concentrating on driving. And then all of a sudden you start concentrating on driving and you don't remember the last 10 miles.
That's the old-fashioned version of that, is that we're worried about this truck and if that rear end's going to hold up or if the transmission's going to make it till I get to where I'm going. So your mind is not on you driving, but yes, you're right. It is on something else. Many things could be, whether it's the equipment or something else going on in your life.
We know distracted driving is something that cannot be taken lightly these days. We see too many results of it, and you hear about it all the time. And it's just sad to see some of these accidents. I was just telling you a while ago about the one I witnessed yesterday, just going home, from here to Conway, Arkansas. And it was terrible. You don't know exactly whether it was distracted or not, but, a guy rear-ended a big truck and it was bad. And then that wreck caused other wrecks, down the road, because people, it just seems, are not paying attention. I mean, I only get to drive, 80 miles, 85 miles a day, 40 miles each way. So I only get to see that rush hour distracted driving. And it's a lot of race car driving, weaving in and out. It's on that phone constantly. I mean, you can see it, especially in the dark. You can see their phone lit up in the cab. It's got the whole cab lit up, or car that they're in. And, so I just witness it every day. And it worries me. I got two boys driving on the roads these days. Thank goodness they're not having to commute to Little Rock and back during rush hour. But, it's distracted driving is something that we have made it serious here at Oakley. For sure, because we know driving a big truck, you got a lot more responsibility than a person driving a four-wheeler. Absolutely. And again, just like you'd mentioned, you are spending a short time in that car, even though it's a high stress, it's a time of heavy traffic and all. But a lot of times our drivers, they're spending 8, 9, 10 hours in that same situation, day after day after day. I hate to bring in complacency into this, but it does happen because the driver gets into an environment where he's comfortable being in that heavy traffic, and it's like, well, done this yesterday, did it the day before, did it last year. It's not a big deal. I can handle this. The truth of the matter is that we never know what's going to happen a quarter of a mile or a few minutes down the road in front of us. So we really have to be on our game all the time. We can't allow ourselves to be complacent, because when we do, that's when we give ourselves time to say, I can relax, I don't have to pay attention, and besides, I can go ahead and pick up whatever it is that I left laying down in the floorboard down here, and I can reach over and grab that, and I can do that without having to stop. I read that text and answered it, and everything was okay. I did it one time. Right. Let me try it. I bet I can do that. I got this now. This ain't nothing. Why are people talking about this being dangerous? Oh, man, I can multitask like nobody's business. It's just a matter of time. It is. Before you're a statistic, and that's what we don't want. So that's what we want to talk about, a little bit, distracted driving. Me and Randy Rymel here at Oakley Trucking, and we wanted to do this podcast because we know how important it is, and we want to get the message out there because we've seen it, especially Randy sees it firsthand with safety videos. We got videos from dash cams that we can look at and see what's going on. And I tell you, it's an eye opener. Do you have some, just to kind of get the listeners in tune with us, some examples or some stories of distracted driving that might, that we could tell and hit home with some people? Many times over the years, I've had friends of mine that's been involved in accidents, and
It's been a few years ago now, but one of our drivers, matter of fact, he'd been driving for about 10 years, and he had never had any kind of a little accident, never scratched a fender. Good driver. It's very, very conscientious about everything that he did. One day he calls me up and he says, hey, he says, you know those little yellow poles? Yeah. He said, well, I got too close to one of them coming off the scales, and I kind of messed up my fender and my step over there. I thought, well, okay, you know, after 10 years of driving, it's like, well, everybody's allowed a mistake every now and then. Well, next week he calls me again. He says, hey, kind of messed up the end of my trailer a little bit there. I got to get my lights fixed and my mud flap and stuff. And I said, well, what happened, Bill? He said, man, I was backing into that door there and trying to get loaded, and I just wasn't paying attention, I guess, and I backed into the door and messed up my trailer. I said, well, that's kind of unusual because this is the second time in 2 weeks. Well, we'll get it fixed. Keep on trucking. Well, the next week he calls me again.
Oh, no.
I said, Bill, what's going on? He says, well, got involved in a little minor accident here. He said, nobody got hurt or anything, but the policeman's making out a report. And I said, okay, all right, well, call me back here in a little bit. Let me know what all takes place. After I got to visiting with him, I said, Bill, tell me, what's going on? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you've been a good hand. You've drove for 10 years and never scratched a fender, and now 3 incidents in 3 weeks. What is it? There's kind of a long pause there, and he says, well, he said, tell you the truth, just me and wife's going through a divorce. We've been married nearly 30 years, and she wants a divorce.
Oh, man.
So I could easily see right then that Bill's head's not in the game. He's not paying attention to what his job is and what he's doing. And he's focused on other things. And of course, you know, the marriage and finances and family's health and those kind of issues are very important to everybody. And he just allowed it to take most of his time and instead of focusing on his driving.
Yeah. That's exactly what happens, part of that cognitive
exactly. Yes.
distracted driving we were talking about. It's in your mind, and that's all you think about when something happens like that. Mm-hmm. You can't get your mind off of it, and you know that's a tough deal to get through. You know, to try to get through because you get when you're driving, right? I mean, you're just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And it's hard not to. I understand totally.
That is at the top of his priority list at that time. After all, he's been driving for 10 years. He doesn't really have to think about it anymore. He doesn't have to concentrate on it. And so once he just gets a little bit complacent, lets his guard down just a little bit, things happen.
Yeah.
And he's just a little off his game.
You got to be fully focused.
All the time. All the time. All the time. There's an old saying that has been around for a long time, and it's just goes along with all aspects of driving, but especially hits home with distracted driving, is the slogan goes, eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, your head in the game.
Yep.
You know, and if you can just tell yourself that and remind yourself of things like that and tell yourself, I'm at work. I need to pay attention to what I'm doing. I've got other things going on. In Bill's case, it was with his marriage and all, but I'm at work right now. I've got to stay focused on my work.
Yeah.
And I'll take care of this, but I'm going to make that phone call later on this afternoon. I'm going to schedule a stop. I'll be doing a 10-hour break or something. I can do it then.
Yeah. You know, that's similar to us. I mean, we're not driving every day, but, you know, early on when I started at Oakley, me and my wife had a good understanding. Don't call me at work unless it's something, you know, that really, really important and you need me for. I got to stay focused here, you know. And of course, she's such a great wife and respectful to do that, and that helps me stay focused to where I'm not distracted by a phone call, you know, something that's going on that's, you know, not really important. I'm not saying she calls me with stuff, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But
the house is not on fire.
And that's the same thing I'm thinking. because I'm doing my job and I get distracted, then it's hard for me to get back in the groove and do it. And I can just imagine driving a truck down the interstate and I get calls and it changes my thinking. I'm not thinking now of safe distance or, what's behind me, what am I coming up on, all that stuff that they've got to think about constantly. It's I'm distracted now.
Exactly. And even though that, of course, the laws, the FMCSA says you can't use a handheld device, but you can use a hands-free device. And a lot of drivers have those, but even then, your brain, your thinking is on your conversation. And if you've had a fairly intense conversation, if it's about marriage or finances or family health or children or something like that, that's very important to all of us, it takes about 10 seconds for your brain to get back focused on your driving, even after you've hung up the phone. So there's still a lapse of time there. At 60 miles an hour, you're traveling like 90 feet per second. So you can see in those 10 seconds, you've traveled 900 feet before your brain, I guess in one way of saying, gets back in the truck with you.
That cell phone has just got to be the most distractive thing that has ever been involved in. And when it comes to driving, I mean, Exactly. It is amazing. That little computer you got in your pocket is, people are addicted to it, absolutely addicted to that thing.
Yes.
And it just makes a lot of challenges when you're driving. And driving a truck, I can't imagine what our owner operators go through every day with all these cars, because they all looking at that phone. It seems like the laws don't matter, the rules don't matter. They're going to look at that phone. These cars driving up and down the interstate. It's like,
yes.
It's almost like, well, that law is not for me. That's just for the truck driver.
Yeah. And there are those states that have, cell phones you can't use. It doesn't matter. And I think here in Arkansas, I think their laws are especially for the younger ones, but even adults, as we've learned to do multitasking and so forth, or at least we call it that. I don't really think we're as good at multitasking as we think we are.
That's right.
You see, and I'm wondering what this person that you were telling me about that rear-ended the big truck in heavy traffic, were they multitasking? It's hard to say, but at the same time, something went wrong. They obviously lost their focus on their driving, and here they are in an accident now. But
now you looked up some stats for us.
I did.
Well,
yes.
Give us a little bit of that to go on.
One of the things that I've always thought of, and part of this goes back to that old-fashioned way of thinking way back before cell phones came along, but drivers that spend the majority of their time out there in the traffic, basically playing in traffic, let's say, their opportunities to get involved in accidents is extremely high already. And that's just when they're staying focused and doing a good job because of so much cars and traffic on the road. But if they're texting, if they're having anything to do with that cell phone, now they've increased those odds by 23 times.
Wow.
23 times more likely to have an accident while they're texting or on the phone. One of the other things here at Oakley that we've noticed, when a driver has a hard braking event, for whatever reason, he comes up on a stop sign a little too quick, or traffic stopping too quick or whatever. When he has a hard braking event, 70% of those events are related to distracted driving. The reason that the driver has a hard braking event is because he's not paying attention to his driving.
And we know that because
those are Oakley statistics.
Yeah.
that comes straight out of our computers, where we look at all of these critical events, these hard braking events that our drivers have.
And you can look at the video.
You can look at the video. You can listen to the video. The audio that's on there tells us that he's on the telephone.
Yeah.
He's talking.
Yeah.
But actually, if you look at all of the truck crashes across the U.S., and I'm talking about all trucks, roughly 70 to 71% of all of those truck crashes somehow is connected with distracted driving. So it is amazing, like you were saying, this little device that we spend so much time with. But I think the answer to a lot of this stuff is that we have got to have that self-discipline. We've got to tell ourselves, just like you and your wife had made an agreement, that I'm at work and please don't bother me unless the house catches on fire or it's an emergency of some sort. Let me wait until I can stop and then I'll give you a call. But to just be chit-chatting back on the phone, back and forth every day, all day long, that's the biggest distraction there ever was. Yeah. You know, because a lot of times the driver, he wants to be at home anyway. Most of our drivers don't get enough home time to start with, and they want to be at home, and they feel like a lot of times they're missing out on things at home. But at the same time, that chit-chat back and forth, that conversation, that texting, all of those things, that creates a distraction for him. And
being disciplined is a challenge with anything.
It is.
But being, what you're saying is, if you need to make that phone call or you need to send that text, I mean, you need to plan for that stuff. You need to wait till where you can pull over safely, rest area, do it that night. I mean, you got to, you get, but here's the thing. I mean, I don't even drive, but I'm thinking, the Qualcomm's going off,
mm-hmm.
the dispatcher's calling me, I've got to be on the CB to go in and out of these plants, or, I'm trying to get direct. I can just imagine all the distractions that a driver has to go through every day. It just, I don't know. We talked, our plan was to, actually, we were going to have a guy, one of our drivers in here, and it didn't work out because I was wanting to hear from him on some of these situations. And I'm sure our listeners right now, our owner operators going, oh, I can tell you, just call me. I can tell you, there's so many distractions though, Randy. How in the world do they discipline themselves to ignore all those distractions?
Well, I think one of the best ways is we see these four-wheelers, and I know it's easy for truck drivers to blame it on the four-wheelers because they're the ones that are doing all the making all the stupid stuff out there. But I think if the drivers, our drivers, will look at these people in the four-wheelers and see what they're doing and ask themselves, do I act like that? Do I text while I'm going down the road? Do I talk on the phone and try to push the buttons and make a phone call? Do I try to do what these four-wheelers are doing? Wow, maybe I might be in the same boat that they're in. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe.
Well, you was telling me about the truck you got in recently to do a road test with the guy. Tell me about that.
Well, he's a really nice truck. It's all custom inside. It was really nice truck. But one of the things that I noticed was a problem. There in front of him, he had his Garmin, his GPS sitting up there, and it's, I don't know, a fairly good sized screen, much bigger than a cell phone anyway. So he's got that on his dash, and right next to it, he's got a little holder there mounted to hold his cell phone in there so he can look at it going down the road. Well, right next to that, he's also got a tablet mounted up, and it's, I don't know, gosh, it's pretty good size, probably 4 times as big as a cell phone. And also on his dash, then we installed his ELD, his log machine for that. So he's got all of these screens.
Probably a pre-pass.
Well, it was a little bit farther forward, but it was in the windshield.
Okay.
And I know that I didn't sit in his driver's seat, but I'm almost sure he couldn't see his fender-mounted mirror for all of these electronic gadgets being in his way. And he's just got so many electronics there that distraction by itself, just to one of them blinks or lights up or flickers or something, he's going to take his eyes off the road and look over there at the tablet or at the e-log or at the phone, or he's going to do something different besides driving. He's going to be a distracted driver. So
I don't see how you can concentrate with all that going on.
And he really can't. He really can. It's I'll tell you, it's just too much. And one of the things that I think would be very helpful Just because that cell phone rings, tell yourself, I can wait and answer that phone call. These new phones, these smartphones, they're going to tell you who called. So all you've got to do is wait 30 minutes or whenever you get on down the road to a truck stop or a rest area or something, look at your phone and then call them back.
Yeah, the hard part with that, though, is if it's dispatch calling you.
Well, yeah, I know, but we've always talked to our dispatchers, and told them, please limit those calls. If you do make a call to a driver, try to keep it real short.
Yeah.
Not no great, long, lengthy conversation or anything, unless you've made sure that the driver's sitting still to begin with.
Yeah.
But, and always avoid texting, because if a dispatcher texts to the driver, that's just going to create that habit of now the driver's going to text back. And so we sure don't want that. And
our policy here at Oakley is no texting between
absolutely
driver and company.
Right.
No texting.
Right.
Because, and not all our owner operators know that you can't be texting while you're driving. That is the dumbest thing to do when you're in a truck driving down the road, even in a vehicle.
Yes.
It's
even in your personal
vehicle.
Yes.
You cannot do it. It is so distracting. There was something I read that it was what was that? It was like having a 0.08 alcohol level content if you were texting while you're driving.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty bad.
That's right.
It's pretty bad.
It's basically the same thing as a drunk driver.
Well, it's everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at this.
Mm-hmm.
I got this down.
Oh yeah.
I can handle this. And it's simple things. You had told me before we came in here, we was talking about an example where we rear-ended a vehicle on a bridge.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Terrible.
That was awful. Yeah. The traffic had come to a stop there on the Mississippi River Bridge, and it was backing up on the bridge, and our driver, evidently, he's looking out the window, watching the boats going up and down the river or something, and rear-ended a vehicle. There's 3 vehicles involved in it.
Yeah.
And, he never hit his brakes until after he hit that first car, and he realized, oh, I just hit something.
Mm.
And then he steps on the brakes. And
that is definitely distracted.
Yeah. And he's simply gotten too comfortable, too complacent, looked out the windshield, and he says, oh man, hey, look at there. That's great. But he lost his focus.
Yeah. Snuck up on him.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and that's the thing. We don't want anybody to be a statistic. We don't want it to happen to you guys. Everybody gets comfortable with what they're doing. I talk about me and Russell. We always have this argument back and forth, He drives in the left lane on the way home because he's my neighbor. Mm-hmm. He drives in the left lane on the way home, just bumper to bumper with people over there. Well, I'm in the right lane over here with the cruise set, just cruising right along. And he's like, well, get out of the way. You holding things up over there. And I'm like, you just go on there with yourself, buddy. And then we end up getting home at the same time.
That's right.
And I'm a whole lot more, I'm feeling good about it.
You bet.
He's over in that left lane just getting after it anyway. It's just different things because he's comfortable. People get comfortable driving like that and confident, and they push it to the limit a little bit, I think, until it happens. And that's the last thing we want. We've seen times where good drivers, really good drivers like that one you talked about at the beginning of the podcast, how he started hitting a few things.
Right.
And we just don't, that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is to make people aware of distracted driving. Make yourself look in the mirror a little bit. Mm-hmm. And am I doing this stuff? And is it just a matter of time before something happens? That's what we don't want you to be, because our guys are the professionals. Yes. So we all know it's probably not their fault. They're the best driver on the road.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It's not these people driving these cars and trucks and weaving it out of traffic. They're the worst drivers on the road.
That's right.
So, our guys are the best, but they're the professional, and they got to stay focused all the time, all day, every day.
Exactly. This is how they make their living. They have got to. One of the things too, and even though I've talked to drivers and they said, well, it wasn't my fault I got involved in this accident. It may not be your fault, but you still get to suffer some of the repercussions of it because of the fact that your truck is now in the body shop for 3 weeks.
Oh, man.
Well, let's see. How much revenue is that going to generate?
Zero.
And when, on the other hand, if the driver had been a little bit more proactive, if he had had just a little bit better following distance, if he had been a little bit more aware of what was going on around him, he could have avoided that, could have avoided the 3 weeks of downtime. Of course, I know Oakley drivers, they got pockets full of money. They're in good shape. So
Right.
some of them would maybe like to have a couple of weeks off.
Right. Maybe.
But at the same time, there's no revenue. It's going to cost them money. And then too, I talked to a lot of drivers, and they said, "Well, yeah, boy, my old truck's doing real good since they got it fixed, except I'm having this problem." And it just seems like that truck never goes back together as good as it once was before the accident.
Well, and that's something, I mean, so if you were to have an accident right now today and your truck's down for 3 or 4 weeks, what are you going to do?
Yeah, there you go. So, and again, I know Oakley drivers, they'll just keep writing checks out of their personal account to pay the bills. But not all drivers can do that.
Right. That's right. I don't know. It's distracted driving is a challenge to overcome. I mean, I have to do it too, but these guys that drive, hours and hours a day, it's definitely a challenge with them. So you got to be prepared. But, good thing is we got some really good guys, and we don't see just a whole lot of these problems. We do see a handful every day of this stuff you're talking about, hard braking, accidents that happen. But everybody needs to know you're that one mistake away. You got to be careful. It's that one distraction away from having a problem, and having an accident. And it's unfortunate. And I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know how y'all stay focused for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, driving across country with these people on the road, because it's you are to be commended.
Absolutely. And, and I always tell everybody in orientation is you see a guy that's got a 1,000,000-mile ring. He's got 1,000,000 miles with no accidents. That is quite an accomplishment, because that's going to take somewhere in the ballpark of 8 years of driving without an accident in order to accomplish that 1,000,000 miles. And if he's managed to do it that long, he's done pretty good. He has had his head in the game. He has stayed focused on what he's doing and paid attention to what was going on around him all the time. It wasn't just when he felt good or if he felt like trucking that day.
He's not getting lucky doing that.
No, he's not getting lucky. Absolutely not. He is staying focused. Yeah. And this is a very intense type of a job. The guys have got to pay attention. 60, 70 miles an hour, things happen really quick. And you have got to stay focused all the time. Or if you just miss something, that's usually when you get involved in an accident. So you really got to be on your A game all the time. One of the things that will help them to be on their A game, and that's just simply get a good night's rest.
Yeah.
And you think, well, that's kind of simple, but and we all have issues and different things from time to time, and the guy doesn't get a good night's rest. Maybe got a bowl of chili in there that just didn't go well with him, and about every hour or so, he has to get up and run back into the truck stop, the bathroom. Mm-hmm. So he didn't sleep well last night. Well, go ahead and try to make some allowance for that, because during the day, you're not going to be quite as awake and quite as alert as you might normally have been if you'd have gotten a good night's sleep. And all it takes is just a little slip up, and you missed something. Now you've been involved in an accident.
And man, when that call comes in, it just stops everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Everything stops. You had plans. You were going to pick up this load, and that way that's the one that was going to get you home for the weekend or whatever. And all that's out the window now. Everything's changed.
All changes when that happens.
It does. It does. So some of the things I'd like to touch on just a little bit, some of the causes. The biggest problem with these truck crashes is the text messaging. but also just looking around inside the cab, and we touched a little bit on that. Looking for a notebook or a pencil or whatever it was that I thought I had it laying right there in the jump seat and I can't find it. Don't be monkeying around with stuff like that. Stay focused on your driving. You can always find that pencil or whatever it is you're looking for when you get stopped. One of the other things that we've seen happen is drivers eating going down the road. I had a guy one time that his wife had made him some pickles, and she had spiced them up real good and everything and put them in a little container for him. And he got choked on one of those pickles. Couldn't breathe. Of course, anytime that a person, doesn't matter if they're going down the road or sitting still, if you can't breathe, there's going to be a panic spot in there somewhere. And he wound up off down in the median and everything and didn't turn the truck over or didn't hit anyone, but it could have been a disaster. Had one guy that dropped his sandwich. He was reaching down trying to get the sandwich, and he run off the road, tore the front end out of his truck, hit a culvert.
Oh, my gosh.
So things like that, it's just not worth it. Let the sandwich lay on the floorboard. You can get another one. Leave it alone. It's probably got
That
dirt.
is the hardest thing to do.
It's probably got
I can
dirt.
put the cell phone down, but I can't leave a sandwich laying in the floorboard. Sitting there looking at it, I got to pick that dude up and eat.
Oh, me.
Got to pull over on the side of the road and get that thing
That's
quick.
right.
Yeah, I know. That's a
Couple of other things is drivers trying to write. Maybe they're on the phone and they're trying to get directions from someplace, and they've got a pad and a pencil there, and they're trying to write or do something along those lines. That's another big distraction where guys can run off the road and hit things, and vehicles in front of them stop, and they're like, well, I was actually looking down because I had this piece of paper on my knee, and I was trying to write this address down, and when I looked up, then that car stopped, and I didn't. And so they got involved in an accident that way. But those are just a few examples, But it goes all back to that self-discipline. We just got to tell ourselves, I'm at work. I need to stay focused on my job. When I get stopped, I can take care of this other stuff. I can dig around and find that sandwich then.
Yeah. Do we have any guys call in and actually telling us about other distracted drivers?
Yes, sure is. Occasionally we'll get that. Not a great deal, but as a matter of fact, I had a driver the other day. It's a little bit different subject, but one of his concerns was, because we always tell our Oakley drivers, when you're dumping out, always wait your turn in line. In other words, don't try to dump two trucks at the same time side by side, just in case one of them decides to turn over.
Right.
Well, this guy was from a different company, and he just pulled up beside our truck while we were dumping. He decided he's going to dump out too.
What'd our guy do?
Well, he told him, he says, hey, he said, this is not really safe. This is not a good idea. He said, oh, we do it all the time. Don't worry about it. And our guy was kind of upset about it.
Sure.
Because he was afraid something was going to go wrong. But every once in a while, we'll get a driver that calls in, and he's pointing out some faults that some other driver has made, or distracted driving. He's wobbling down the road. He's got his foot up on the dash and his phone in his hand. And occasionally we'll get some calls like that.
Well, they need to call those people in.
Absolutely.
Call the company. I'm sure the company would like to hear about it.
Yes.
If that is happening. I know we do. If we got guys doing something like that, we want to know about it.
Absolutely. We don't have cameras that face the driver. Our cameras are all looking forward. They're forward facing. But I can also at the same time understand why some companies may have cameras that face the drivers, because the drivers, he's not paying attention to his job. Yeah. And that maybe that's a mental thing that helps the driver to stay focused. But we've got to have that self-discipline to tell ourselves we're at work. I got to pay attention.
And I think that our guys have that. I really do, because anywhere you go, Oakley owner-operators are a different caliber.
They
of
are.
truck driver.
Yes.
Than the general truck driving public. They're just a different caliber. They're a head above, I think, above everybody else. And
Yes.
they're intelligent. They understand the rules. I think they're disciplined, like you're talking about.
Mhm.
I know we have accidents that we've talked about here today, but with 865 owner operators, you're going to have accidents. I think, the purpose of this podcast today is basically be aware of your distracted driving.
Exactly.
And do something about it. And don't be confident that you've got it whooped. That I can do I've got this distracted driving down.
Yeah. I would encourage everybody to look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I one of those distracted drivers?
Yeah.
Do I do those things that is going to cause me to lose focus on my driving?
Yeah, and I'd say most people do that at some point during the day, but you just got to be disciplined not to do it at all.
Absolutely. Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Again, I'd like to repeat that old slogan that, like I say, has been around for a long time, but keep your eyes on the road, keep your hands on the wheel, keep your head in the game.
That sums it up right there. Yeah. Appreciate you hanging with me today, Randy. Appreciate everybody listening to this podcast. I hope this was helpful and make you guys a better and safer driver. Everybody out there, we enjoyed. Also, listen up for next week's podcast. Is going to be the guys from recruiting are going to get together. I am on vacation, so yeah. So those guys, they think they can do this without me. I said, well, I'd love for you guys to learn how to do this without me. So those recruiters are going to get in here and they're going to talk about the recruiting process and hiring and what all goes on with that. So it'll be a good topic for next week. Appreciate everybody listening to this. Be sure and share it with everybody. Go on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us feedback anytime you got questions or anything, especially on this distracted driving, this episode today. I will forward them all to Randy Rymel.
Okay. Be sure and give me a call. If you got any questions or problems with anything like that, just always give us a call.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Oakley Podcast, Trucking, Business, and Family. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate or review the show in the podcast platform of your choice and share it with a friend. We love hearing from our audience, so if you've got a question, comment, or just want to say hello, head over to our website, theoakleypodcast.com, and click the Leave a Comment button. We'll get you a response soon and may even share some of the best ones here on the show. We'll be back with a fresh episode very soon. Thanks for listening.